All right, Chad Hasty Show, News Talk, KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Joining us on the phones, Republican strategist, good friend of the show, Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Chad. Good morning.
Let's start off. We've got President Trump kicking off officially, I guess, kicking off his reelection campaign today in Florida. Looks like he's got a lot of enthusiastic supporters down in the Orlando area who are going to be coming out, and I guess they're planning a big old party today, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, this is, a formal announcement event. Kind of begins the campaign season, although really President Trump's reelection campaign began almost immediately when he got elected. He formed his new entity and has begun raising money. He's already raised well over $100 million. And the campaign has been very aggressive, particularly when it comes to the digital presence, running, millions of dollars in digital ads, acquiring email addresses, activating small dollar donors, and they don't use these rallies. They don't waste the opportunity these rallies present. They're collecting. I think there's something like 100,000 or maybe even 200,000 people who signed up to attend this rally. For a venue that only holds 18,000 people. Those are email addresses of people that they know support the president, that they want to engage over the next 18 months. And so they use these rallies as a data push, really, as much as anything else. And obviously tonight's rally is going to get a particularly high level of attention and media coverage. So I will say there's been some questions in the last week or so about polling and sort of the president's standing, and I think the campaign, maybe didn't handle the polling part of it all that well, but they want to, sort of reset the narrative. I don't believe the president is at, 40% or something like that for reelection. I think he's a 50-50 shot to be reelected. Depends a lot on who the Democrats nominate and what kind, where the country is next year. But look, they need to reset the reelect at this point and the narrative around it, and tonight is their opportunity to begin that.
Matt, what do you think, going back to the polling, what do you think the campaign did wrong on that? When I look at it, I go, it's way too early to buy into any of these polls and think that they really matter. Yeah. But they fired some folks over at the Trump campaign.
Yeah, that's right. So this will take a minute to explain. Really, there have been, I think, basically two polls that I would point to. One was a Quinnipiac poll of Texas last week that showed Biden up. I think it was 48-44, up 4 points. A point I made on local television in Austin, that poll had a Dem +4 sample. The top Republican pollster in Texas told me it should have been an R +6 sample. So that literally changes the entire poll from a Biden +4 to Trump +6. If the headline was Trump +6 in Texas, that's not a big story. So, but really to the key issue about the Trump campaign, it appears a few months ago they were testing different turnout models, and they tested a turnout model that looked similar to 2018, a midterm election. Midterm elections and presidential elections have very, very different turnout. And so in a worst-case scenario, apparently he was down in a lot of states, and somehow those numbers got out. They decided to fire pollsters, as a result of that. I think, honestly, probably ignoring the story might have been better, but certainly just trying to make it a one-day story would have been better. The president engaged, the campaign engaged, of course, firing pollsters. I just think they kind of dragged it on, to answer your question, and I don't think there was much of an explanation, or it wasn't, were very well explained, why these are not the actual numbers. These are, worst case scenario type models. So there was an opportunity for them, I think, to tell that story, and I just don't think they did it very effectively.
Is it necessarily a bad thing for people in the swing states to think that the president is down? I mean, wouldn't that make people more motivated to get out and vote?
It could. Obviously sustaining that motivation over the next, 18 months would be a huge question. Like you, I don't put a whole lot of stock in a poll taken this far out, right? A poll is a snapshot, as we often hear. So this is a snapshot of the election 18 months beforehand. You raise a good point, though. Obviously, if Trump's base thinks he can't lose, then they may not turn out because they may not think their vote matters. So generally, you'd rather not be, releasing or leaking polls that have you down 10 in battleground states. You'd rather have the polls show that it's really close and that people's votes are going to matter.
Yeah. Visiting with Matt Mackowiak here on the Chad Hasty Show. Let's switch gears over to the Democrats. They're going to have 2 nights worth of debates coming up later on this month. Elizabeth Warren gets stuck on the first night, along with a bunch of people polling at or below 1%. Meanwhile, the rest of the contenders, they get on the debate stage on Thursday. How do you think the Democrats are handling this whole debate situation?
Not very well. I think it's kind of ridiculous in a field of 24 people that 20 of them qualified for the first debate. Now, maybe the argument is, well, let's give everybody a chance and that, make it fair. And if somebody has a breakout performance, then maybe they can, stay in it going forward. But you've got, I saw a line in Politico this morning that said they have a meditation guru appearing in the debate, but not a Western governor. The governor of Montana missed making the cut for the debate by one respondent in a poll.
Wow.
That was how close it was. Now, apparently, he's looking like he's going to qualify in July in the next round. But look, I think there's a lot of anger among sort of the core Democratic base with how the party's handled it. I don't know that. I'll be honest with you. Our field was 17, and we didn't handle it very well last time. I don't know how you handle a field of 24 people. I think these debates are going to be ridiculous with 10 people on each stage. I mean, each person's going to basically get, 5, 6, 7 minutes over an hour and a half. So, you're not going to really show very much in 5 or 6 or 7 minutes. Yeah. But, look, I think this field's going to narrow. I think it'll narrow before the end of the year. And I think it's really going to narrow, once we start seeing voting in Iowa and New Hampshire. But this field is just so large and so unwieldy. I think being too critical of the DNC is probably unreasonable.
Matt, who are you keeping an eye on in this Democrat field? To me, it seems like Elizabeth Warren has quietly really upped her game, and she's overtaken Bernie Sanders in a couple of different polls. I think she might she may be the best candidate out there right now for the Democrats.
Yeah, she is certainly rising right now. We've had different phases of this campaign where different people have been rising. There was a couple months there where the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg, was rising, and apparently it looks like he may be raising quite a bit of money. It sounds like he raised $17 million last month alone. But you're right. I mean, Warren is taking some vote from Bernie. Bernie appears to have been basically down about 10 points in the last month or so, and a lot of that's going to her. I thought it was going to be a Biden-Bernie, head-to-head race going down the stretch. It looks like it could potentially be a, Biden-Elizabeth Warren race. I also would say, though, I think Biden remains fairly weak as a front runner, and these debates are going to be a huge test for him. Does he engage with lesser candidates who attack him to try to get attention? How does he square his record with kind of where the Democratic Party is today? Does he, create problems for himself with gaffes, which has really been his record over his career? It's interesting. There have been really different takes on Elizabeth Warren, I guess, randomly being given the first night's debate, not the second night with all the major candidates, with 4 of the 5 top candidates. I think it's a disadvantage. I think that the TV audience is going to be lower. I think the expectation is that she'll be by far the best, which adds risk for her. And she's not going to be in the moments that are going to matter most. The other 4 candidates are. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see whether the debates change sort of the dynamic. But right now it looks like, Mayor Pete and Elizabeth Warren are rising. Bernie and Biden are falling, but are still in the top 3, and it's anyone's race at this point.
Man, I want to ask you, in kind of in a nutshell way, the Republican Party, the RNC, they have a ton of money. They've been raising a ton of money. It seems like it's a well-oiled machine. The Democrat Party nationally does not seem like it's a well-oiled machine. There was a story last week that said, I believe they had to take out a line of credit in order to keep going. Why does that matter?
Yeah, good question. It matters because national parties, play a huge role in sort of the organizing side of campaigns. They will be major players in the battleground states, partnering with state parties and with the campaign itself. When Trump became the nominee, he really was in no position to run a general election campaign, and really they almost didn't even try. They basically just kind of kept the same operation they had from the primary. And the reason they were able to do that is because the RNC was ready. And so the RNC had the data operation ready to go. They knew who they wanted to target. They had significant resources. They had high-level staff. They had research, on the nominee. They had so that's obviously not the case now. I mean, Trump is running a much, much, much more sophisticated and professional re-election campaign than he did last time, and he has the resources to do that. And as an incumbent president, that's entirely appropriate. But yeah, I mean, comparatively, look, Democrats are not giving money to the DNC; they're giving money to individual candidates, and so that's fundamentally going to waste money because you can only have one nominee, but you're having 10 or 12 different Democrats that are raising decent money. And so some of that money is not going to a useful purpose, really, fundamentally. But yeah, the RNC, is raising very, very good money. They're clearly out of debt. I mean, they have a 4 or 5 or 6 to 1 cash advantage. And the Democrats have had, real trouble raising money, whether that's related to, the DNC chair Tom Perez, dissatisfaction with the party, or that they're just giving, dollars are flowing to the candidates instead of to the to the party committees. Who knows? But it does matter. It's not going to matter as much as how much the candidates raise themselves, but it does matter.
Very interesting. Matt Mackowiak, tell us about your newsletter and your podcast.
Yeah, the newsletter, which I know you receive and 3,000 Texans receive every weekday morning, is called Must Read Texas. We take all the top news from around the state, put it in one clean, easy-to-read email, and deliver it to your inbox every morning by 9 a.m. You can sign up for a free 1-week trial at mustreadtexas.com. The podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's available in the iTunes Store, on Google Play, on Stitcher, and on Spotify. Most recent episode is with the author Brad Thor, who's sold 15 million books. His latest book is great. I had a chance to get an advanced copy. It's called Backlash, and it's out on June 25th, and we talked to him about his books, and it's a great conversation.
Very cool. Matt, as always, we appreciate your time. We'll visit with you next week.
Thanks, Chad. Take care.
Have a good one. That's Matt Mackowiak here on the Chad Hasty Show.